Hey guys, it's Jimmy Bremner with CTOA and Copcast, and today I'm privileged to have Spider Jones on the show with us today. And what we're going to talk about is young men and youth today and their struggle to kind of stay out of trouble. And Spider grew up in the Windsor-Detroit area, and has been around a long time. Has got a lot of you know experienced information on youth gangs and that type of thing. So, Spider, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Uh, I am a former broadcaster. I still do some broadcasting, but
I missed your show, actually. I missed that show. It was
I
great.
spent 32 years in broadcasting. Started with CHWO in Oakville. Went from there to the Fan 590, where I hosted the all-night show.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, for about 6 years. And then went from there to Talk 640. And then from there over to CFRB, and from there over to Zoomer. So
Right.
had a very good career in one I really enjoyed in radio. And during this time, I opened a youth center up at Chalk Farm, called the Spiders Web Youth Empowerment Center, and we did that in uh, association with Greenman Property Management, to bring a safe haven to that area, and somewhere where a drop-in center where the kids start coming in at 7 or 8 years old right after school, and it's open till 9 o'clock every night. So that's what I'm up to now. Plus, doing my second book is just finishing, and we just signed a contract to do a movie on my first book. So things
Well,
are
that's wonderful.
exciting right now.
That's great. So, tell us a little bit about growing up. I mean,
Well, I
border
grew up.
towns are always tough towns, right? So,
Okay, actually, I'm a Canadian. I grew up in Windsor.
yeah,
The thing is, I lived in Detroit off and on for years. I have a lot of family members there. I mean, that was where most Windsor kids gravitated to back in the day, because that's where Motown, the music, all the great things.
tigers.
Yeah, I ended up living over there. I'd go over there for 6, 7 months at a time, and then had to
Right.
come back sometime back home. But uh, I think, being an ex copper, that I did. I mean, I had some problems with the law growing up, and ended up doing some time in correctional institutions. And the last place I did time was Millbrook, which was
Mhm.
maximum security for 2 years less a day. And I came out of there in 1966, long time ago, and
Yeah.
ended up. Uh, I had no place to live, so for the first couple weeks, I lived on the street. I actually lived in an old bread truck down on Eastern Avenue, an old abandoned bread truck, and I'd get my meals at Scott's Mission, but I never stayed at any of the shelters. That just, as you hear a lot of the mental ill say, it was just not. It was a lot of violence, a lot. I just didn't like it,
Sure.
and I ended up through a friend of mine, George Chavallo, uh, ended up setting me up with Sully, Sully's gym at 109 at Ossington, and I ended up living there for a while. And
I've had the
that's
privilege
when
of meeting George Chavallo a couple of times, and really nice gentleman.
he is. George is a good friend of me, opened a lot of doors for me over the years. I met him in 1963 for the first time. He was living in Detroit then, and training at the Motor City Gym way up at Woodward and Canfield. That's how we first met, and we became friends. But he's very instrumental in opening doors for me, because George is a Canadian icon, obviously,
Yes, yes.
and probably the greatest heavyweight we ever had in Canada. And he
He's
opened a
got a
lot of.
big pair of hands. I got to tell you, I shook hands with him, my goodness, big
He has,
hands.
but you know something? The biggest pair of hands in boxing, and George has got huge ham hocks,
Yeah.
but the biggest pair of hands were that of Sonny Liston.
Is
They
that
were
right?
so huge that they had to have a specific made glove to put on his hands,
Wow.
and he was a deadly puncher. But anyway, I lived in the gym, and uh, that's when things started to change. I met Muhammad Ali. He came here to fight George, 1966, and he trained at the gym. And I got to meet him, and uh, there's so many uh, aspects of my life. Back then, I'd always wanted to be a broadcaster, but I'm a radio personality. One of my heroes back in the day was Wolfman Jack.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
But prior to him, it was a guy named Alan Freed.
Yeah.
Alan Freed was the first real super jock, and he's the one that brought the phrase to prominence, rock and roll phrase, and he called that everybody's music. He was a white disc jockey who loved the black sound, and then it was called race music.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
And he began to play it mainstream, and it caught on. People like Chuck Berry, Little Richard, Fats Domino, and he blended it in with people like Dion of the Belmonts and Richie Valens and Buddy Holly and them, and he called it rock and roll, everybody's music, and that's what it became. And I wanted to be like Alan Freed. One afternoon, my cousins took me to the Fox Theater in Detroit, and after watching Alan Freed in action, I said, wow, that's what I want to be. And I was only about 10 or 11 years old.
Sure. Yeah.
Already hit me. The dream was conceived there and then. I'm going to be the next Alan Freed. And I remember, it's crazy, sharing that dream with my cousin, my older cousin, and his crew. They were a gang, but I didn't know anything about gangs back then. I was 11. They called it a crew. And funny thing is, Jim, they laughed at it. And that's what I talk about today with young people, because they laughed at it and said, man, you out of your mind. Radio ain't no black guy's game. That's a white boy's game. We're supposed to be out here in the streets. Our game is hustling. That's what we know how to do. So that's when it all began to go downhill, in the sense where I became a hustler in the street. We come from a big family. I mean, there was 9 of us plus a cousin, and we had lived in a 2-bedroom bungalow. 5 of us slept in the same bed every night. The first time that I slept alone in my own bed was a prison cot.
Wow.
So we didn't grow up with much. And the only people that drove nice cars, had a pocket full of green, and all the things going back then in terms of, nice cars and money and that, and sharp clothes, were the hustlers, the pimps and the hustlers. And that, that's relevant today with the drug dealers. So these young kids that come from, they come from the projects or the hood. They see this, and it's their easiest option. At least they think it is. As they say, all that glitters isn't gold. It looks like it's cool, but they don't understand the road they're going down. And
is that a learned helplessness? Is it passed from generation to generation? Like you said, you saw that what you wanted to do, that was your goal. And then through some discussions, it's like, you know what, maybe I can't achieve that.
Well, for me, I can speak for myself, first of all, that when I kept hearing people laughing about me,
right,
telling me I'll never make it as a radio jock, you hear something enough times and you begin to believe it. Your mind begins to tell you that. And then pretty soon your mind begins to lie to you. It tells you can't be this, you can't be that, because people around you have said this. What you're doing is you begin to see yourself through the eyes of other people, other people's perspectives, and your mind becomes limited. You can only do so many things. It's not wide open. It becomes a limited mindset. And in order to pursue dreams today, in this competitive world, you have to have a warrior mindset. You got to believe that you can achieve. I didn't believe I could make it in radio for many years because I was told I couldn't.
Right. So let me ask you this. You talked about, the cars and the money, all the bling. But let me ask you, with all your success in broadcasting, doesn't really replace the self-respect that you have now, right? And the accomplishments that in my mind, the short-term money and bling can't replace your life experience and all that you've accomplished.
No, it can't. But it took a long time for me to get there.
Of course.
And because I saw myself as a hustler and basically a loser.
That's a shame.
Because I disappointed so many people. I had a good mother and father. We didn't have anything, but most of the people that I grew up with they didn't have two parents. They didn't have that male role model. We didn't have. The guys that I looked up to, they ran the streets. The pimps, the hustlers, the bootleggers, the fences. These were the guys that drove the big cars. They had the money, and they gave us money to do things for them. And I was out thieving at 11, 12 years old, and being praised for it. It was cool. And I started getting a pocket full of money. At the time I was 16, 17 years old. I was making more than my dad just hustling. You don't think about what's going to go down the road. You'll never get caught.
So with your youth center, how do you instill in young people again that sensibility of self-respect and rejecting the quick cash and the bling, and being your own person? Like, how important is having a male role model to a young man nowadays that is slowing them down and saying, you know what, you maybe want to look at life from another angle here?
Well, that's a good question. First of all, we get them when they're young. And that's because I do a lot of prison stuff too, right? Going to prisons at correctional institutions, and I talk with people. I talk with these young people, but they're older and some of them are hardened. It's harder to get through to them because by now, believe me, they really don't have self-esteem. We get them when they're young, and you mold them. We teach them how to set goals. We work with them with their homework. We have a homework club. We've got a computer club. We show them options, skilled trades, and things like that. But most of all, we help them develop that sense of self-esteem, that self-worth. You're worth more than the streets. And you get into their heads and you understand, you tell them, they'll understand there's only two things that happen to criminals. They go to prison or they die early.
Yeah.
And then when you come out, it's very difficult to turn your life around. Jail is a tough place to be. Look, I teach the kids, look, some of them, they look up to these gangsters and these prisoners. I tell them, look, when these guys go to prison, they lose everything. First of all, you lose your freedom. They tell you what to eat, what to drink, what to wear, what to watch, what to read. You've lost everything. And then when you come out, you got that stench or that stigma of being an ex-con, and it's very difficult to get over that. But kids that are of sound mind and have self-worth aren't going to go to prison. They have other options, other things to fall back on. When you also have to teach them that it may not come easy. Everybody's not born with a silver spoon. That's why when you pursue dreams, you have to have a warrior's mindset. And that comes through self-confidence, which comes from developing goals. So we set goals for each kid. And we start with small goals because we don't want to set people up for failure.
Of course.
We have good role models, male and female. It's important. You're fighting against a lot of difficulty. You're fighting against these kids look up to rappers. They look up to, and some of the music is so violent, it's denigrating to women.
It very much so.
it glorifies violence, East Coast against West Coast and all that. And we have to get this out of their heads. This is what we're up against. And it's not easy. I mean,
it's tough now with social media, the prevalence of YouTube and Instagram, and people are becoming celebrities through shameful acts instead of being decent people. It's remarkable to me how everything's sort of turned upside down.
Well, we don't have enough leaders calling out the wrong ones. We have. I have no problem with people like Black Lives Matters. They brought some good things but you gotta call out the bad brothers and sisters. You gotta call them out for what they are. I mean, and I'm saying this with all of us, just like good cops got to call out the bad.
100%. Any good cop wants to see the end of a bad cop. Absolutely.
It's not easy, but I'm working with the police department now, and a lot of my staff are people there. My team, I should call them. The Believe to Achieve team. That's the name of our organization, Believe to Achieve. But and my youth center is called the Spiders Web Youth Empowerment Center. And I didn't name it that. They named it after me, and I think that was great. But we get these kids when they're young, and it's so much easier to mold them and teach them how to think in critical thinking. Think for yourself. Become aware of things. Become aware of your thoughts. Why do you think this way? Why do you want to be a gangster? Why do you want to be this? And we're working with a lot of these skilled trades now because there's a big shortage in skilled trades.
Well, I think that's an excellent opportunity for any.
But a couple of kids we have now become police officers over the years. One with York and one with Toronto.
Fantastic.
Police department, and so yeah, there's nothing more valuable than good role models.
Right. So if I, say, I've got some spare time on my hands, how would I get involved in helping youth at your particular center? Do you have volunteers?
Send me an email, and we bring you into the center. You get to meet the kids. First, you have to be cleared by the police. The police,
of course. Yeah, of course.
That includes you, Jim. But
I'm retired. Yeah, so
yeah. We have a lot of things going with the police department. As a matter of fact, the chief Raymer, the former chief of police, got together a fund so that the kids from our center could go up to the Blue Mountain for a couple of days of skiing.
Oh, very nice. Yeah, very nice.
And now these kids also play. We got them playing golf now, and golf was never a big thing in the Black community at one time.
Look at Tiger Woods now.
Yeah, but some of the biggest things, some of the biggest deals are closed on a golf course. So we got our kids exposed to golf, and through Greenwood, we also got them exposed to tennis and all kinds of other things. But more than anything, it's a safe haven where the young people can come and evolve and grow. And that is what I wanted, because when I began speaking with kids, it was back in the early 90s when I was at the Fan 590. My story was out there. I told kids how I turned my life around. I talked on the air about it and becoming a motivational speaker, because I worked with sports teams and just get them fired up. And I thought, this reminds me of growing up. We were very poor, and we had to sew a wood stove. And every night before my father turned in, he would feed that stove with some coal and some wood. But about 3 or 4 in the morning, that fire would die, and that house in the winter would become so cold. So you got to keep the fire burning. And I noticed that when I first started speaking to young people, I could get them fired up by sharing my story with them, getting them to believe if I can do it, you can do it. Because I failed grade 3. I failed grade 4. I was in a remedial grade 5 class for slow learners. And everybody called it the ding dong class, and they made fun of us. If I would back then, if someone would have told me, hey, Spider, one day you're going to interview one of the greatest fighters that ever lived, Muhammad Ali. You're going to interview Mark Wahlberg, Tina Turner, Bill Clinton, Mike Tyson. I would have thought, are you out of your mind?
But isn't that remarkable?
That's what I'm saying. And so I began to share my stories with people and said, look, if I can do it, if a kid with a learning disability who peed the bed till he was 14 years old, who went to jail, who failed grade 3 and 4, not only go back to school and get degrees in journalism and broadcasting and pass with high honors, then why can't you? Your dream, if you want your dream bad enough, and it's realistic, you got to stay on it. You got to be willing to. My father used to have a saying: everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. What he meant is, are you willing to sacrifice to bring that dream into reality? The bigger the dream, the more you have to sacrifice. I had to learn those things. And even the greats, I read about them, like Michael Jordan, who got dropped from his varsity. He didn't make the team, first of all. Or Sylvester Stallone, his story. And I share these stories. Oprah Winfrey, who slept on a dirt floor and her dresses were made of potato sacks when she was young. These are people, J.K. Rowlands, who suffered from marital abuse. And you read
I think
about
it's remarkable, actually, that so many people that attain such a high level were sort of in their younger years were like outcasts or
yes,
kind of pushed to the side type of thing. But because, as you said, they have that warrior spirit, they have a goal and an objective, and they never go off of it. They just stay with it, and they do great things. And again, all the people that you pointed out there have very similar upbringings.
When you look at, you take Jay-Z, one of the most, he won more Grammys. This guy is a record mogul. Do you know that he was rejected by every major production company and recording studio in New York City, and they even said he couldn't do it?
Yeah, it's amazing to me. There's so many examples that people that meet and achieve, the standard, and people didn't, want anything to do with them. But the inspirational part is they stick at it, they stay on the mission, and they accomplish great things in their lives. Even if they're not celebrity status or whatever, they just accomplish great things in their neighborhood. Or
and the thing is, I tell young people, you're conditioned to idolize these people, but you don't know their story, how they got there,
right,
what their journey, what they went through to get where they're at. And when you do, you'll understand that everybody fails, everybody makes mistakes.
Oh,
yeah. The thing is, they should be life lessons. And when you learn that a mistake or a failure or a rejection is just a life lesson, keep going. My biggest problem, Jim, back in the day was when I failed, I took it personal,
yeah.
and I gave up for too long until one night I was in Detroit. I the name escapes me, but there was this speaker, this motivational speaker, and I went with my sister. It was at the Renaissance Center in Detroit. I'll never forget him, because when he began to talk about how he went to prison, how he come from a big home, and how he lived in self-doubt for years, I thought he was talking directly to me. And I know that night, like there was no epiphany with me, but it sort of helped change my life, because I thought, if he can do it. He started putting these thoughts in my head. Most of the stuff in my head had been put there by other people. And many of these other people had adversity themselves and had given up. And so the world was their enemy, and the man was their enemy, and you're not going to make it, so forget about it. But once I got that stuff out of my head and began to look at myself in a different perspective, if he can do it, I can do it. It's all mindset, and we teach young people at the youth center to develop that strong warrior mindset.
Does faith play a role in what you do, or should it? Should we be getting people back to faith, regardless of what religion?
I think faith is a wonderful thing. I have faith. I'm a Christian. I'm not a what you call a Bible thumping Christian, but I have faith And I believe that I'm 80 years old and I'm in great shape. I run, I do everything.
Yes,
I'm
you
here
are.
to me, I'm here for a purpose. And I'm not
Right.
sure what it is because all my friends are gone. They've passed away, brothers, and most of my brothers and sisters are gone. All the close friends that I grew up with over the years are gone. And yet I'm still here. And I'm God bless it, I'm still healthy and I'm still active, and I'm very thankful for that. So yeah, I do have faith, and I don't do a lot of preaching. My father was a pastor, by the way, a
That's
small.
all right.
So you have to have faith, but most of all, you have to have faith in yourself, because when you have faith in yourself, and that comes from setting goals and achieving them. It doesn't matter how small the goal. When you achieve a goal, I tell parents, teach their children goal setting. When you achieve a goal, it makes you feel good. But when you don't, you don't like yourself. You don't trust yourself. When you achieve and you begin to trust yourself, you're willing to go on to the next step
Yeah. Well,
because you
yeah,
believe.
I think people talk a lot about resilience. In policing, how do we build resilience in officers? And basically, you got to get back on that horse. Like the more life experience you have, the more experience you have with bad times and failure, the stronger it makes you. I mean, it's not going to be a pleasant emotional feeling a lot of the time, but it does give you a life
Eventually,
lesson. Yeah,
eventually, you have to leave that comfort zone. I had to leave my comfort zone. My comfort zone, I stayed in it for many years, and many people do because they're scared of the unknown. The fear holds them back. The fear of failing is the worst.
mhm.
Fear of failure, fear of rejection. But some of the great actors I know were rejected tons of times. Look, Jim Canfield that wrote Soup for the Soul,
Yeah.
he, listen to this. When I interviewed him, you know what he told me? His first book was rejected 144 times. But you know what? What if he would have refused and gave up?
I
When
mean,
J.K. Rowling did her first book, she was rejected 12 times in a row, and her agent told her she should think of another career. I'm glad she didn't.
like I said, I find it fascinating how many people that were outcasts have done so well in their lives and have been such shining examples to other people. Have you ever thought of running for mayor?
I have been approached to run for politics at all levels and never did. Didn't want it. I feel my ministry is out here in the street.
Yeah.
I really feel that it is. I don't want to be some backbencher.
Well, you're
For
so charismatic and you have a way of engaging people that just brings them in and they want to hear that message. You know,
and I hate, and I mean, I said I give God credit for that because uh, my father, I had a good father. My father was like that. He was a great man. He was a wonderful man, and so you can come from a good family and still mess up. If
of
you
course. Yeah.
you have to be around the right people and the right conditions. And when I was a kid, I thought my father was the stupidest man in the world. By the time I got 22 and I'm in prison, my father must be the smartest guy in the world because he told me exactly what would happen if I continued on my route. And I had friends that were, people don't realize that I had friends that were murdered. I had a
Yeah.
brother that took his life after spending 30 years of his life in prison. I've had many friends murdered. I'm blessed to be here.
So let me ask you a question about that. So you're a young person and you're in a crew or a clique or whatever we want to call it, and one of the individuals in that, probably your friend, has been murdered. What goes through your head at that point? Could that be me, or it won't happen to me, or maybe I should consider moving on to something else?
Well, the first time it happened, a friend of mine, he was the only white guy in the group, and he was a very good friend of mine. And he went into the north end of Detroit, and we told him, "Don't go, don't go." But he was 24 years old. He thought he was invincible. And he went up there and got murdered. Broke my heart. Some people act tough, but when you have a bond with somebody for years, I didn't. I mean, I cried like a baby. I'll be honest with
Mhm.
you. It blew my mind, but it makes you think for a while. But if you have no other option, if you feel you have no other option, you're just going to stay because it looks it's just part of the game. And that's the way a lot of them look at it. Look, Jim, when I was 15, I didn't think I'd live to be 20.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
And a lot of people are like that I know. And it was tough. It's very tough to lose friends. And you know, as a man, sometimes you hide it, but underneath, yeah, it hurts. It hurts. Does it? Some people, it changes them. For me, it was a gradual change. As I said, it was a gradual change. I want to change. I didn't want to be. I wanted to be a radio personality. I didn't want to be a hustler, although the hustlers are the kings, the royalty in the hood. Make no mistake about it. Drug dealers, pimps, and hustlers driving big cars are royalty on the hood. They become the professors and the teachers for many young people out there. That's what we're up against. I've been very fortunate because a lot of the gang members know me, and I get respect because I was one of them at one time, and number two, they know I don't snitch. I mean, even my friends on the police department know that. So I just mind my business and try to work with the kids when they come to me. Some of them are gangs.
Have you ever been involved in negotiating a truce among these gangs that
no, I haven't
see as much gun violence, or is that an idea, something we can look at?
No, I don't get into that part of it because that can be pretty dangerous. But
yeah.
I mean, I see a lot, and they stop and talk to me. It's not always like it is on TV. They're not always out there just coming after you. Even like when I was in prison, I didn't have a lot of problems. I did pretty good time. One of the guys that actually turned me around a bit was a white correctional officer who'd grown up in South Africa. And I was under the assumption because he grew up in South Africa that he hated me because I was black. I mean, that's what I was taught. And I found out he didn't. And the reason he left South Africa was because he didn't like the politics. And one of the guys that told me, and he told me, he said, your personality, you just don't belong in here. You're just a good guy.
Yeah.
And, I mean, that was a beautiful thing to hear from someone. But I didn't think I was a good person because I was out robbing and stealing. And my father being a pastor, I let my family down. I embarrassed them. So it was, I was full of self-loathing at one time.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. You're 80 years old. You grew up in the turbulent times of the 60s, late 60s, with all the racial tension that we have. Do you think we're further apart today than back in the day?
I don't know if we're further apart. I mean, I let's put it this way. Like, I married my wife. She's Irish. I married her in 1976. And we've been married. It was tough back then. We don't have the same problem today. And I guess it depends on where you go. We've come a long way, but we still got a long way to go.
Well, absolutely. It's encouraging that you would say that, though.
The radio industry, when I broke in, I was the first black man to go coast to coast in Canadian radio. And I would go into the, the newsrooms, and there was never anybody of color. So you didn't get the kind of perspective you wanted. When I came to radio, my perspective was different. I shared things because I grew up in poverty. I grew up in violence. I grew up with police brutality. I grew up with all those things. So I had a perspective on both sides, and it's worked to my advantage. I understand that you need the law. Without the law, they're coming to get you. People just take what they want. The law holds them back. The fear of going to prison. We need the law. These are things that before I didn't look at. I look at through different eyes now. But to get to your question was, what was it? It was about.
Well, again, I think when we look at media today, it's so divisive. We're so.
It is because you don't get the full story in the media today. You get bites and cuts of it, but you don't get a lot of it. And then you got your left and your right, and they attack each other, and it's just people are confused. You look at Fox and you look at CNN, you get two different ones. You look at the star, you look at the sun, you get two different perspectives.
But they seem to be extremes. They're not.
Yes,
There's
yes.
nothing in the middle for us anymore. And
Well, I
again,
heard a
if
guy.
you look at those extremes, it can be easy to think that races are further apart now than in the past.
Well, I'll tell you something. In terms of media, in Toronto, in radio especially, they have a long way to go. There's still very few people of color in a talk shows. And I'll tell you something I heard the other day that bothered me. I heard a noted broadcaster at a noted station talking about the Black community, and we're not doing anything to help the young people down there. Actually, I was on his show, and I told him, I says, the only time you come down here is behind a police presence. You guys are ambulance chasers, but you don't see what we're doing down here. You don't see the Black team at my center working with the police. They're not all Black neither. We got white kids that work there because I believe in racial harmony. We're all stuck on this little mud ball flinging through space. And we're all of one race, the human race. It doesn't matter. Color doesn't matter to me. It really doesn't. Although I'm a Black man and very proud of the Black community, I have friends from all different. I have Jewish friends. I have Catholic friends. I have Protestant friends. I got Sikh friends. I got Muslim friends. It doesn't matter to me. If you treat me with respect, you'll get it back. But I teach young people that. And that's so important because a lot of them don't get it in the home. And they hear a lot of negative stuff in their home, and they take it out. It's like excess baggage they take out with them. And that's how they see life, through the eyes of others. We should be working with our kids and teaching them to respect one another. Right. And respect yourself. The respect begins with yourself. So we teach our young people that.
Yeah.
And it's
I think we've come full circle, my friend. You're like a wizard. You've got a wealth of knowledge based in your experience. I think your view of this harmonious world is fantastic. I agree with you 100%. I really like to have you back on the podcast at some point and discuss other things. But this has been a real privilege for me to speak to you today. So thank you so much. Last thing, how do we get a hold of you if people want to participate in your youth center? How do they get a hold of you?
You can reach me, spiderjones at rogers.com. Spiderjones with an I. Spiderjones at rogers.com. And I come out and speak. I love working with young people. That's my passion.
It's remarkable, and I really appreciate all that you're doing and all that you'll continue to do. So thanks very much. This is Jimmy Bremner, CTOA, Copcast, and I'm out.